Adam, thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest. I had to twist your arm a little bit, didn't I? Because you're a bit shy, really, aren't you?
Oh, a bit, but it's my pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Listen, before we start, there are going to be people listening in who are going to say, why on earth is your business called Covered? Tell me the story about Covered Speakers.
Well, it's an interesting one. I actually started in this, I suppose, industry and sector as a drummer, a professional drummer in a band. I had my own party band for events, weddings and awards nights and evenings in London, as you can imagine. And we were called All Covered Up. That's just a name. I think my mum came up with the name, actually. She was helping me with band names. And that kind of led into an entertainment agency, and then now a full-blown speakers bureau agency. So I kind of chopped the name off, and the reason it's called Covered is because we cover everything. That's the idea, from speakers, motivational speakers, to entertainment, magicians, all sorts for clients. So we're like a one-stop shop, if you like. And it's a horrible phrase, but that's what I call it.
Yeah. It describes what's on in the tin, right? So you can go from your MC to your business speaker to your entertainment type speaker, your entertainment, the whole thing, which is fantastic actually for clients, because you're briefing one person or one organization rather than having lots of different people, and you've got one contract, one agreement, rather than having to negotiate. So I like the idea of the one-stop shop, actually, Adam. I quite like that.
Okay. Okay, I'll use it then. It's going on the website.
And what caused you to change from the music and entertainment industry and move into working with speakers?
Again, another, I think, quite an interesting story. So the band was playing weddings on the weekend, and this was full time, and awards nights, as I said, like the marketing awards and the fish and chips awards, you name it, we played them. And we were playing music as, you know, awards nominees and winners would come up onto the stage. We were playing the Stings, as they call them, the band. And we were playing with people like Alexander Armstrong on Pointless, the presenter. And I thought, oh, I could actually, it was the same client we were helping. They were booking these awards hosts. Why don't I help with the awards hosts as well? And that led me to think, how the hell are they getting these awards hosts? How are they booking them, the client, for these events? And that led me into this whole new world of speaker bureaus. And I realized that, you know, the client was going to other speaker bureaus to book their awards hosts, like your Alexander Armstrongs, Sue Perkins. And so I kind of started competing with other speaker bureaus for the work. So I was providing the entertainment, the bands, and now it's awards hosts and speakers.
Fantastic, brilliant. So, Adam, you've had a bit of background, obviously, selling and promoting your band and promoting other things too. So what has that sales experience taught you in entering the bureau world?
Well, a lot. It's taught me to learn to listen to the client and actually get the full brief from them, which actually helps get the booking. The more I listen, the better. It also helps, just helping helps, if that makes sense. So I'm always trying to help. Do they want this? Do they want that? What are they looking for? And the type of speaker or act they might be looking for their event, and how will it improve their event? That's kind of my mantra. How can I improve and make their event memorable?
Love that. Love that. And the whole listening thing, it's interesting because most people are scared of selling because they think they have to be, you know, have pattern, this, that, and the other. Actually, you just need to listen, and the client will tell you what they need, and you just need to respond with what you can offer them and how you solve it. So I love that. Fantastic. So tell me, what, obviously, you know, you've developed the speaker side of your business. You've developed it in COVID, which is fantastic. What would you see happening in the next few years for you and your bureau? Are you going to continue with what you have as your offering? What's the future?
Well, the future for me, in my mind, is to expand and work more in America, in the US market, as well as here in the UK and Europe. So really expanding and building a team out in the US. That's, I don't know why, but it excites me. We already have several clients in the US, particularly technology companies and software companies in that kind of California area. And as I said, I've found a lot more speakers in the US, really interesting people like Amy Purdy is one, a former Paralympic athlete. So really, as I said, expanding and building a really strong team that can support me. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And actually, I mean, the US market is the most developed market. We all know that in terms of, conference and event speakers, that's really quite advanced. It's also probably the biggest market, isn't it? So it's very exciting. So I can see why. There'll be speakers listening to this podcast thinking, okay, I'm interested in the US. So what do you look for in a speaker? What is it that's important to you?
Well, they have to have something unique that stands out from the rest, and something kind of what we call niche. There's lots of futurists out there. There's lots of sustainability speakers out there, but have they come from a particular background, and do they make the most of their story? It's all about story for me, and that's what we're trying to sell to our the end client. It's the story, really. So it could be someone who's climbed Everest, but lots of people have climbed Everest, and it's an amazing achievement. But where have they come? Did they have depression? Their backgrounds. It's really fleshing out the story of the speaker, I think, and people buy stories. That's what I found and learnt, that the clients are buying a story and an emotion. I'll give you an example. I keep going back to Amy Purdy because it's such a good story. She was a normal 19-year-old, and she unfortunately contracted some kind of disease and lost both of her legs. But that didn't deter her, and she still became a snowboarder. The dream was to be a snowboarder as a kid, but it was a Paralympic snowboarder, so she still overcame those hurdles, awful hurdles in life, and became, and achieved her dream. So it's about that story for me, and stories sell. So
yeah. Fantastic. And actually that links so well to your background, of course, because every piece of music, every song tells a story, doesn't it? And so here we've got every speaker has their story, every speech has the story, and that narrative is so important. And I think sometimes speakers don't realize how important their story is in terms of making it easier for a bureau person to be able to talk about them and remember them, because you remember stories, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so it's stories that stick. That's the most important thing. So and you can, when I'm on a call with clients, I can immediately tell that they're engaged when I'm talking about these kind of things. And that's I think what I do well. I tell the story of the speaker. So when speakers come to me, to the bureau, it's that background. It's like that hook that we're looking for, which makes them stand out from the next futurist or the next motivational speaker. Because everybody's got a story, right? And everyone's got I believe everybody's got a truly unique story and experience that people want to hear, and so that's really important to get across to us.
Love that.
But all summarized in a one-page document, I must add, always helps.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. A nice brief biography, not sort of several pages. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
That's it. Yeah. Don't go on too long. Yeah. Always
so
helps.
You've mentioned different types of speakers. You've mentioned futurists, you've mentioned sustainability speakers, you've mentioned motivational speakers. So what type of speakers do you work with?
I always say all sorts, everything from business, economists, climate change, sustainability is a big one, of course. They're talking a lot about that at the World Economic Forum this week, about not just profit, but morals as well. So how can businesses be sustainable? But as well as hosts and presenters and moderators for events as well. So it's not just the speakers. We also do add-ons as well, like if you want a moderator, so like a journalist. We've got several journalists from the BBC and Sky on our roster. But I suppose my passion is, those big topics, those big topical areas like the sustainability, mental well-being, and diversity and inclusion. That's another huge area that we work, to help clients with.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What I like about the way you work, Adam, which I think is rare in this day and age, and it's because bureaus have got so big, but you actually know all your speakers pretty well, which is lovely. You don't have anybody on your roster. You call it a collection, in fact, which I really like. It's quite unique. That you haven't at least had several conversations with, checked them out thoroughly, that you know them personally, and I'm not sure that's the case for all bureaus. So I think that's a little differentiating factor for you, that you check everybody out, which I think is good.
Yes, and I'm all for hearing from other, up and coming speakers as well, because I just see myself. I was an up and coming band back in the day, competing with like the top bands, party bands, I mean, for weddings. So I'm always looking, because I believe that the up and coming speakers, they're more ambitious for a start, and they're not complacent. So I think they're ready to kind of listen more as to what the client wants, whereas like the more established speakers, who are great, they're just like, this is what I do, this is what I offer, take it or leave it. But the up and coming speakers that the kind of speakers that you work with are more malleable, adaptable, and
Flexible.
Willing to change. Flexible.
Flexible, willing to learn. That. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
And whilst I have the time, and I try and make the time to speak to everybody, whereas other speaker bureaus, they are slightly larger, and they have more time to, they don't have the time even to vet speakers.
I think that, they do have a vetting process, but I think what you'll find is that not every individual in the bureau will have spoken to every single speaker, whereas in your case you have. So that's the differentiator. And it's true, you get to a point where you get so big you can't do that. I remember the days when we had so many thousands, and it gets unwielding. What's lovely is that when you start out in this industry, and you will find this, is that the people that you worked with first are the ones that stay with you throughout, because you've known them from the beginning. So actually these are really important relationships in the first founding years, I suppose. They're really important. And I know you've got some great people in that sort of that collection. Okay, cool. So talk to me about your process. How do you work? How does it all happen?
Well, I'm always changing things around and progressing. Traditionally, it's a call with the client. It's more video calls than ever now. I'm a traditionalist. I like to go and see people eyeball to eyeball, and that's happening more now that we're out of the pandemic. And I love going up into London. So it's an initial call with the client about their requirements, their needs, and then I kind of put together, and I'm learning. I used to put together a lot of options because of my enthusiasm, speaker options and ideas for a brief, but I cut it down to about 3 or 4. I find the more specific, the better. So I limit it to about 3 or 4 speaker options based on their brief. And the idea is hopefully the client comes back and says we'd like to book so-and-so. Then we have a pre-booking call with the speaker and the client, which I'm on as well, or one of my team are on that call, and that's to discuss everything about the event, how they're going to help, and how everything's going to be run. But I'm also in the last, I would say, year and a half, I'm also doing pre-booking calls, which I think is really important for speakers to come on. There's a couple of speakers who do love to come on before they're even booked, and it really does help because the clients can really kind of get a real feel for the speaker before booking.
So let me just clarify. So there's 2 types of call. Then there's the pre-booking call before the client commits to book, which you do with speakers, which is great. And then you do the other. Then you do like a briefing call, I suppose, is it once the client has booked them. So you've got 2 types of calls. That pre-booking call is great. I think, and it's something that I saw happening more and more in the marketplace as I was coming out of the industry. I could see that, and I think it's for a client, I think that's a really excellent thing to do. Are you finding that clients respect the speaker's time and don't ask you to have pre-booking calls with lots of different speakers and will just choose one or two?
More often than not, it's only the one, and they're usually kind of, we like this speaker. Adam, can you just set up a little call with the speaker and us, just to, we just want to kind of just make sure, 100%, they're 99% sure. You have the odd client that does want, 2 or 3, and they may be looking elsewhere, I don't know, but then, they're short of time as well. So, and we kind of say, I kind of ask, are you kind of fairly sure that you want to go ahead? Why not? It's worth asking. And then, yeah, we put the call together. So it's a really nice thing to do. And I usually find it kind of seals the deal, as they say, once the speaker has that call. There's a guy, Jamil Qureshi, one of our speakers, he's very good at that, and working with him, and I've actually learned from him. So I learn from the speakers as well and how they operate. He's very confident. He said, we will close this if you get me on a pre-booking call. He even goes as far as saying, I don't care if there's even an event being planned. Even if there's not an event being planned, I'll come on to a call with them, because in 6 months' time, they may go, oh yes, I remember having a call with Jamil. Let's see if he's available. So that's another level where, even before the pre-booking call, just a call, it's worth 10 minutes of the speaker's time just to have a call and introduce themselves and just, plant themselves in the mind of the client.
Absolutely. I think that's really good. I mean, yeah, and it's lovely what you're saying, that you learned from your speakers. I used to use my speakers often as mentors, and certainly when we went through COVID, I reached out to 2 speakers that I'd worked with and said, right, help me. What do I do with my business now in COVID? And they were fantastic. So because we're surrounded by incredible experts, aren't we, in this world? And sometimes you sort of have to pinch yourself, because it's like, wow, I'm talking to some of these people that are just like the top in their field. It is fabulous.
Yeah. And I suppose if I was a speaker, there's so much competition out there. The clients, they and also there's so much information on the internet they can find. So you can set yourself apart, I think, by having that call. That's what, as I said, Jamil does really well. He sets himself apart because they're like, wow, he's come on a pre-booking call with us, and he's happy to give up, 10 minutes of his time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of hmake time to explain what he does, how he's going to help them. And it really sets him apart from the pack. So I would suggest that to any of your speakers, make that time and that effort. You will see it pay off. And everyone's happy then, and they're very, confident that they're booking somebody that they know is going to be good, and not just me sending a video or some bio about the speaker and saying they're really good. They can really interact with them beforehand. Yeah. It really does help, and it's so vital. As I said, there's so much competition out there in the speaker world. So yeah.
Anything to stand out. Something that James Taylor does, actually, which I rather like, and speakers could do this for you, for the Bureau, that when you're put forward for an event, or when he's recommended for an event, he'll record, if he hasn't got an opportunity to have a call, he'll record a personal video saying, this is my understanding of what you're looking for, this is what what I'm taking away from the brief for you, this is how I personally would tackle it, and if that's something appeals to you, I'd be delighted to speak with. And that's like, wow. And people, he stands out, because if you're then looking at 5 or 6 speakers, or even 3 or 4, as you suggest, and you're trying to decide, and one of them has sent you a personal video where they're saying, this is what I understand and this is how I do it, he closes lots of deals that way. So clever. So James and Jamil, basically, if your name begins with JAM, you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah. And to add to your point, because I know that James also, after the event, on the plane home, he also records the call saying, thank you very much for having me. It's these little touches, and the Speaker Bureau hasn't asked him to do that. He does that off his own back. So he record something saying, thanks very much for having me, so-and-so, and would love to maybe help you in the future, with consultancy work, because I realized a lot of consultancy work comes off the back of speaking. So he told me that as well. I'd never thought of this. This was about a year ago. I'd never thought about that either. And So I ask my speakers, could you record something now on the plane home when they're speaking in faraway places? So again, the client really likes that, and it helps everybody.
Yeah, love it. But you also, so you've been very clever. You've used LinkedIn
Yeah.
quite a lot, haven't you, to grow your business? And you've used voice messaging successfully, haven't you? Tell me a little bit about that. So have you used that? Obviously, you can't do that when you connect with someone, can you? Or is it
Yes,
only after
you
you connect? You can.
After you've connected, yes.
After you've connected.
Yeah.
Super.
So it's an app on your phone, and it's like leaving a voice, like a traditional, voice message for somebody, and you can do it as many times as you like until they tell you to go away. But no, I'm very nice about it, and you just, when you connect with somebody, as I said, you have to have the. I was going to do a live demo. Would you like a live demonstration?
Well, I think it's difficult because we're on a podcast, so I think it'd be hard. But but
okay. Well, I'll tell you what I say.
Yes,
So
do.
we connect. Yeah, so I connect with my prospect. I'm looking for event managers, head of talent, leadership and development managers who may like a speaker. So I'd say, hi, Mary. Thanks very much for connecting with me. It's Adam from the Covered Speakers Bureau. Just wanted to introduce myself. We're a speaker bureau and we help event managers like yourself with a wide range of keynote speakers and external guest speakers for your event. So yeah, if there's anything we could help with, do let me know. It's just a very casual, informal initial. It's because they get a lot of written messages all day long, and I found, and a lot of prospects come back and say, "Wow, that really stood out to me, Adam. Thanks so much." There's no kind of negative reaction. It's either they ignore you or think it's a bit weird, maybe. But lots of people come back and say, "Oh, that really stood out," and I get more of a response from the voice messaging because they get hundreds of probably texts a day.
Yeah, and it's also quite relaxed. It's like, if you need me, I'm here, rather than pushing, which is lovely. And I think that's probably why you've done very well in the US, because they'll love the English, the accent, won't they?
Yeah, I mean the US. And I also call people as well. Some people have more Americans than British have their number, so I call them on their mobile, and most of the Americans are willing to speak to you if you call them, and they're happy to have their number up. Whereas I find maybe like Europeans more reserved, not so much. So that's also an idea. And some have their email address as well. So yes, but the LinkedIn messaging, the voice messaging, is a really nice way of introducing yourself to somebody, a prospect.
Love it. And actually, it's a good thing for speakers to do once they're booked and they connect on LinkedIn and they can say, "Hi, I'm looking forward to speaking at your event." It's not intrusive on LinkedIn, is it? Because you're not going directly into their email box, so to speak. You're slightly distanced. Listen, you've given us so much great content. I want to ask you one final question. Yes. I just want to get a feel from you as to how you feel the market is at the moment. Is it more virtual? Is it more in person? Is it picking up? What are the fees like? What's your personal feeling at the moment?
I think it is picking up in terms of in-person events. There's a lot more traveling happening, which is really good. And we're sending some of our speakers to Europe, as I said, and America's really opened up. But the virtual, I think the virtual events are here to stay, and it's going to be, people say hybrid. It's going to be particularly I find the marketing teams that we work with are more virtual because they can reach out to thousands and thousands of people on a webinar. Whereas if it's an internal employee, then they want to do it internally. I mean, this is kind of obvious stuff because they want all their employees to come together, bond. Whereas the marketing events are more, widespread. So they do it online because they found this way of getting to 10,000 plus people, whereas they can't do that in a conference room. So there's a real mix. We help with internal events and external, customer events. So no, I think the market's good. It's in a good place, and so events are back, very firmly back. And there's a good future, I think, for our industry and our sector and speakers to find work. And there's more about culture and well-being, and companies want speakers to come in and talk about these things. Whereas maybe they wouldn't have had a speaker in the past. They need outside help, I think.
Fantastic. Well, that's a really, really positive note to end on. So I very much
Yeah.
appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed yourself and haven't found this like the Spanish Inquisition.
No, it's been a pleasure, Maria.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for listening to the Speaking Business podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts, tell all your friends and share it. I will be back with you next week. Thank you.